It was November 2023. In the border area, where the pre-dawn air cracked like frozen breath, I was gripping my wife Seojin's hand tightly. Her hand was cold and rigid, and our two daughters, Hana and Daeon, followed behind us, holding their breath. Just 50 meters ahead, the border guard's searchlight was slowly moving. One wrong step, and we would be finished right there. I was the deputy director of Pyongyang's Central Distribution Bureau. People called me part of the privileged class. But what I actually saw wasn't privilege, it was the structural violence of starvation. From the moment I realized that, there was no going back. During the 20 years I worked as the head of distribution, the classified reports that came across my desk always contained the same sentence: monthly starvation deaths. Reported number 982. But the actual number was 10 times higher. Chongjin, Horyong, Musan. Children boiled tree bark to eat, and elderly people collapsed and died in front of distribution centers. Meanwhile, at Pyongyang's banquet halls, lobsters, steaks, and caviar were piled up insanely high. I could no longer bear that absurdity. And finally, my family and I decided to escape. On the night of November 14th, our family was staying at a party official's residence in Hizen. My wife whispered to me, "Haeyoon, tonight is our last chance. If we go back, we all die." I nodded and answered, "Tonight at 3 a.m. Just 10 minutes. Those 10 minutes were the only gap that would determine our family's life or death. At 2:50 a.m., we tried to pass near the checkpoint while holding our breath. But that night, there were 2 guards instead of 1. I made an emergency contact with the broker, agent. 10 minutes later, fireworks exploded in the distance. The guards ran toward the sound. We took that opportunity and ran at full speed. The Yalu River spread out before our eyes. The November river water was cold as a knife. The moment we got on the boat, a shout came from behind. "Stop!" The light hit us and the first gunshot splashed into the river. The second bullet grazed the side of the boat, and the third bullet pierced through my arm. My wife was about to scream, but our youngest daughter Daeon covered her mother's mouth and sobbed, "Mom, please be quiet." I gritted my teeth and rowed. Blood flowed down my wrist, but I couldn't stop. Gunshots continued to ring out from behind. But we crossed the river. We arrived in China, but that was just the beginning. With the broker, we changed cars 5 times over 3 days and had to avoid countless public security checkpoints. The wound on my arm was festering, but I couldn't stop. My eldest daughter Hana said, "Dad, hang in there a little longer. We're almost there." With those words, I could walk again. The first hideout was a warehouse in Jilin province. We spent 2 days on the concrete floor without heating. Every night, the whole family held their breath. At the sound of footsteps outside, broker agent knocked on the door and said, "We leave in 1 hour. Get ready." We prepared to leave without any luggage. All we had were the clothes on our bodies and forged documents to use as passports. The second move was in the back of a freight truck. We hid among boxes and traveled for 8 hours. In the narrow space where we could barely breathe, Daeon held my hand tightly. "Dad, I'm scared." I stroked my daughter's hand and answered, "It's okay, Dad is here. Just hang in there a little longer and we can get to a safe place." But I was scared too. The pain in my arm was getting worse, and I was starting to run a fever. I could tell the infection was spreading. At the third hideout, agent brought simple medical supplies. Disinfectant, bandages, and a few painkillers were all there was. While my wife disinfected my wound, I gritted my teeth and held back my cries. "Haeyoon, you need to go to a hospital. We can't leave it like this," Seojin said, tears streaming down her face. But I shook my head. "Not yet. I just need to hold on a little longer." The moment we went to the hospital, we would be caught by public security. Then we would be forcibly repatriated to North Korea, and our entire family would go to a political prison camp. On the 4th night, we changed cars again. This time it was a van. 2 other defector families were also in the vehicle. We only exchanged glances, no one spoke. Around 3 a.m., the car suddenly stopped. Agent said urgently, "There's a checkpoint ahead. Everyone hold your breath and pray." Everyone in the car froze. Outside, we heard the voices of public security officers. Sounds of someone asking questions in Chinese, the driver answering. Time seemed to stop. Next to me, Dayon was trembling slightly. I hugged my daughter tightly. At that moment, the car started moving again. We had passed the checkpoint. After a week, we arrived in Kunming. We waited there for another week. While the forged passports were being prepared, we stayed in a shabby inn room. Hannah looked out the window and said, "Dad, people here walk around freely. They're not afraid." I put my arm around my daughter's shoulder and answered, "We'll be like that soon too. Just wait a little longer." But my condition was getting worse. The pain in my arm had spread to my shoulder, and I was breaking out in cold sweats every night. My wife looked at me with worried eyes. "Haeyoon, please go to the hospital. Something really bad is going to happen." "I'll try to hold on a little longer. We just need to get to Thailand," I answered through gritted teeth. Finally, the day of departure came. We took a plane to Bangkok. At the airport, I felt like I was going to lose consciousness. But I forced myself to hold on. On the plane, my wife held my hand and whispered, "Haeyoon, we did it. It's almost over." "Not yet. We can't relax until we reach the embassy." When the plane landed in Bangkok, I barely managed to stand up. During immigration, my heart was pounding like crazy. But we passed without incident. We left the airport and took a taxi. I showed the driver the address agent had given me. Bangkok's streets were unfamiliar and chaotic. We arrived at a temporary accommodation and rested for a day. And the next morning, we headed to the Korean embassy. When we stood in front of the embassy, my legs were shaking. The 28-day escape was finally ending. I collapsed. I am Young Haeyoon, Deputy Director of the Distribution Bureau of the Democratic People's Republic of Korea. I am applying for asylum. My voice trembled. My wife and 2 daughters were crying beside me. I held their hands. An embassy official came out and guided us inside. At that moment, I realized that I had truly survived. "It's okay now. You're safe." At the official's words, I finally relaxed. And I collapsed. When I opened my eyes in the hospital, my wife and daughters were by my side. The doctor said, "If you had been a little later, sepsis would have been dangerous. You're really fortunate." I looked at my family and shed tears. We had done it. We really had done it. A month later, we boarded a plane to South Korea. When we landed at Incheon Airport, my daughters shouted, "Dad, we're in Korea. We're really in Korea." I hugged my daughters and answered, "Yes, this is our home now. This is our home." After arriving in Korea, I revealed everything. Pyongyang's luxury, the province's starvation, the deaths of children. That was the system I had been part of. An investigator asked, "Why did you decide to defect?" I thought for a moment and then answered, "I found out where the rice I was distributing was going. It didn't go to the starving children, but only to the tables of Pyongyang's privileged class. I no longer wanted to be part of that system." After completing education at Hanwon, our family settled in a small apartment in Seoul. My daughters enrolled in school, and I tried to adapt to Korean society. One evening, Hannah came home from school and said, "Dad, today's school lunch was so delicious. I ate until I was full with my friends." Hearing those words, I teared up. The fact that my daughters could grow up without hunger made all the risks worthwhile. Dayon also brightened up. The child who initially couldn't speak well and was withdrawn had now become an ordinary middle school student, laughing and chatting with friends. "Dad, the teacher praised my drawing in art class today." Looking at my daughter's bright face, I thought, this is why I survived. But at night, I still have nightmares. The elderly people who collapsed in front of distribution centers, the children chewing tree bark, the mortality statistics on my desk. All of it doesn't disappear from my head. My wife held my hand and said, "Haeyoon, coming here was the right thing to do. Look at our daughters. See how happy they are. I know, but there are still countless children starving there. I started testimony activities at a North Korean human rights organization. I told people what I saw, what I experienced. North Korea's distribution system is a tool of control. It's a structure that makes people obedient by keeping them hungry. Every time I gave a lecture, the audience was shocked. But I couldn't stop. This was what I could do. After a year, Hana said, "Dad, I want to become someone who works for unification too. I want to help North Korean friends live freely like us." My daughter's words moved me deeply. Yes, you can do it. Dad will support you. Even now, every morning when I wake up, I look out the window. Seoul's sky is clearer and freer than Pyongyang's. But even under that sky, someone is still starving. Someday, all the children in North Korea must grow up eating hope, not hunger. That is why I survived, and that is why I don't stop testifying. My name is Young Hae-yoon, a defector and former deputy director of Pyongyang's Central Distribution Bureau, and now, a father fighting for freedom.